year,
And what will
like we do. It's a 1-year deal that will, I think, be very routinely extended as time goes by.
And what will
To
your
be
new
totally
tariff?
clear, they're not going to impose the rare earth controls that they proposed. President Trump and President Xi came to an understanding on that point.
What will your new tariff rate on China's goods be once you
It's the
sign the
same,
deal?
other than what the tariffs remain exactly the same.
55%.
It's about
That's it.
What will your new tariff rate on China's goods be once you
the
sign the
same,
deal?
other than what the tariffs remain exactly the same.
55%.
It's about it was 57, now it's 47
And how long?
because we reduced it by the fentanyl, and because I believe they are really taking strong action. We've already seen the action on fentanyl, and they're taking very strong action. So we reduced to 10%.
So that November date is gone when it was going to go up again.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So
That's all.
on fentanyl, they've agreed there are a variety of precursors. You may recall that actual fentanyl was scheduled by China in the president's first term successfully. There are certain precursors where they take whatever actions they need to control that. If they can control rare earths, we know they can control the precursors. And President Xi, I think, was very strong in saying he was going to enforce those laws internally. And of course, we'll watch that. And we'll
He's
work
going to
with
be
them.
very strong in enforcing the fentanyl, everything having to do with fentanyl and regulations internally, including taking very strong measures against those that don't obey.
And a variety of other tariffs still remain. Section 301 tariffs from the original, a variety of Section 232 tariffs. Some of these tariffs are, as the president mentioned, around 40%. For some individual products, it may go up to 100%, but as a general matter, it's about 45, 47%.
So, sir, it sounds like you might be going to China then after the successful
Yeah,
meeting.
that's another thing we agreed. I'll be going to China in April, and he'll be coming here sometime after that, whether it's in Florida, Palm Beach, or Washington, D.C.
Did you read anything on the shipping fees, the 301 shipping investigation?
Well, that's been
So we're going to postpone that while we negotiate with them about that issue. We're trying to rebuild shipbuilding. The Cranes just agreed to invest $150 billion in shipbuilding, so we think we have a good path forward.
but that's no longer an issue.
The war in Ukraine or Taiwan forward. Just agreed to invest $150 billion in shipbuilding, so we think we have a good path forward.
But that's no longer an issue.
The war in Ukraine or Taiwan come up.
We discussed that, and we discussed basically these are rough winds in Asia. I must tell you, this is a rough flight. We could have waited an hour, maybe. This is a little tough. These are tough conditions for interviews. You know, they're going to be watching Trump. They're going to say he didn't look too good. He's got the shakes. I don't have the shakes, but people are going to think I do.
You're pretty solid.
So Ukraine, it came up.
Yeah, it did come up. Ukraine came up very strongly. We talked about it for a long time, and we're both going to work together to see if we can get something done. We agreed the sides are, locked in and fighting, and sometimes you have to let them fight, I guess. Crazy. But he's going to help us, and we're going to work together on Ukraine. There's not a lot more we can do. The oil, he's been buying oil from Russia for a long time. It takes care of a big part of China. And, I can say India's been very good on that front. But we didn't really discuss the oil. We discussed working together to see if we could get that war finished. It doesn't affect China. It doesn't affect us. And I'd like to see it done on the basis. I don't like to see 6, 7, 8,000 young people, mostly young people, for the most part soldiers, be killed. It's not costing us anything. In fact, we make money, and I don't even want to talk about making money. I don't care about making money in that case. But, we send weapons to NATO. They buy full price. They buy the weapons. They give them to whoever, but I think they give them probably to Ukraine for the most part. And we discussed it. We discussed all that. We're going to work together to try and get the war with Russia and Ukraine solved.
What about the Taiwan issue, sir?
It never came up. Taiwan never came up. It's not discussed, actually.
What else didn't come up that you thought might come up? You had mentioned you didn't get to everything.
We had a long meeting, as you know, but a lot of things we discussed in great detail. A lot of things we brought to finalization. A lot of finalization. I thought it was a great meeting. I think it was a very friendly meeting. It was a good meeting for two very large, powerful countries, and that's the way we should get along with the large, powerful.
Why did you write your Truth Social about nuclear testing? What about resuming nuclear testing? What prompted you to do that right before the meeting?
It had to do with others. They seem to all be nuclear testing.
Russia?
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
Any details around the testing, sir? Like where, when?
It'll be announced. We have test sites. It'll be announced.
Did Israel give you a heads up before they bombed Gaza? And is it still a ceasefire if they're
it's a
stopping?
ceasefire. It is. No, they had a sniper, and one of their soldiers were killed, and they did retribution. So we'll see. But it is a ceasefire. It's back to ceasefire.
But is that
What is the thinking behind reducing troops in Romania, the drawdown of U.S. troops in Romania?
You'd have to ask. I mean, I can tell you about it, but it's not very significant. It's not a big deal.
On nuclear weapons, sir, which countries do you have in mind when you say you want to send a signal?
What a rough ride this is. The interviews are tough enough without your life being threatened. You guys okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That camera guy's very steady. We're going to look real bad today on television, I'll tell you. I think that, it's pretty much, I think we've discussed mostly what we said, pretty comprehensive. We're going to issue a statement on some of the details. But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12. Okay, I think it was a 12. I think very importantly, just the whole relationship is very, very important. And I think it was really good.
And especially coming on the heels of the successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many
Real
successful
strength,
meetings.
right? The whole
And so
way.
many meetings great for our country with literally hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have come into our country over the last 4 days, represented by this meeting. But trillions of dollars, where Toyota is going to build plants, $10 billion worth of plants. And, I could go over so many different companies coming in. They're pouring money into the United States. So beyond even this meeting, this was an unbelievable trip. And I hope you're glad you were a part of it. It was big.
Did you
Every country, Japan, I mean, you look at South Korea, Japan, and so many other countries that we met there. They're investing tremendous amounts of money in the United States, like money that we've never seen before.
Sir, are we investments from China in the U.S., additional investments, anything like a...
They have investments, and they will invest. And China, I think they feel very strongly. They congratulated me on the tremendous success that we've had, because there's never been a country that has had so much money come into it for purposes of investment, for building, for auto plants, for AI, etc. So he was very strong on congratulating me for that.
But you didn't commit to any additional investment or
We
outflow.
didn't really discuss it, but he would.
Did you ever get through to Kim Jong-un about setting up a meeting? Does he have a phone?
We never were able to talk because I was so busy. And really, this is why we came. I think it would have been maybe disrespectful to the importance of this meeting if we did that. So I'd come back with respect to Kim Jong-un. I'd come back.
What do you want to talk about with him?
I had a great relationship with Kim Jong-un. I think if I didn't get elected, you would have had, if Hillary Clinton came in at the time, who he doesn't like too many people other than me, if you want to know the truth. I think you would have had a big war. Could have been a very bad war, too.
Sir, with the nuclear announcement, just one more on the nuclear announcement. Do you worry that we're entering a more risky environment when it comes to nuclear issues?
No, I don't think so. I think we have it pretty well locked up. But we have more than anybody. But I see them testing. I say, well, if they're going to test, I guess we have to test. I'd like to see a denuclearization because we have so many, and Russia has some. Russia's second, and China's third, and China will catch up within 4 or 5 years. I think de-escalation would be, they would call it denuclearization, would be a tremendous thing. And it's something we are actually talking to Russia about that. And China would be added to that if we do something. Thank you all. It was a great success. It was a great honor. I mean, he's a tremendous leader of a very powerful country, and I give great respect to him, and we appreciate the fact that he came for this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anything on Canada? Anything on Canada?
We had a very nice conversation with him. We really did.
Thank you.
Up before they bombed Gaza, and is
Pretty much. I think we've discussed mostly what we said. Pretty comprehensive. We're going to issue a statement on some of the details. But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10, I'll tell you.
When you say you want to send a signal.
What a rough ride this is.
A successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many success.
Round 2. A local sheriff is catching heat on social media for using food as punishment. That right there is the Wharton Burger. Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones serves it to inmates in isolation. Our Courtney King sat down with the sheriff today about why he uses it. But Courtney, my question is, would he eat the burger?
Rob, that was my first question for him. So not only did he say he would, he did, and we have it all on camera. We're going to show you that in just a few minutes, or in a moment, actually. The sheriff tells us that he's not the only one that does this, and that detention centers all over the country do this. And it is important to note that the burger is not made to be bad. We do have the recipe for it, and we'll put it on our website for you. It's basically a turkey burger. The sheriff says that what's punishment about it is that the inmate in isolation gets that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day until they leave isolation. And like you said, he has caught a lot of flack on social media about this. One person even calling him a disgusting human.
The State Department of Corrections is not my boss, so I basically don't give two what they think.
On Wednesday, we sat down with Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones and watched him eat this. It's no ordinary burger. It's what the sheriff calls a warden burger. So you have zero complaints about the warden burger?
Me personally, no, I would eat this. Hell, I'm eating it now.
The sheriff tells us he's been serving it to inmates and
This,
about the warden burger.
I'm eating it now.
The sheriff tells us he's been serving it to inmates in isolation for all 3 meals for the last several years.
This is jail. You don't get to choose. Your mommy and your dad and your Aunt Lily doesn't get to make your meals. I'm your aunt. I'm your grandpa. I'm the one that gets your meal prepared and make sure it gets done.
The sheriff says inmates get put in isolation for things like fighting, and the burger is an added punishment.
If you get in trouble and you go to an isolation cell, it's no different than your regular cell. And that's what you get 3 times a day, and you get all the water you can drink. It's very nutritious. It's good for you. It has lots of fiber in it. Fiber is good for you, right?
Sheriff Jones says a dietitian approved the burger, and it's not made to taste bad.
It's got many ingredients. It's made with ground turkey, potatoes, carrots. It's got celery. It's got flour.
He says the punishment is in not having variety. Jones says inmates can be in isolation for up to 10 days at a time, which means they could eat up to 30 warden burgers. Would you ever eat it for 3 meals a day?
Yeah. I'm easy to please on what I eat. I come from a generation that you eat whatever and what I eat.
For 3 He says he hopes the burger will make inmates
that you eat whatever's in front of you.
He says he hopes the burger will make inmates think twice about acting out while in the Butler County Jail. Has it worked? Have you ever had someone in isolation be like, I'm never getting in trouble because I don't want that darn burger ever again?
Yeah, we've had people that leave. They always tell me they never want to eat that burger again. And this may be just a little piece that keeps you out of trouble, keeps you from hurting other people. And that's my goal here.
So the sheriff tells us that he's never been fined or ordered to stop using the burger despite some state officials saying that he's violating some policies. And guys, I was not able to try the burger because I'm gluten intolerant, but we have a burger for you guys that the sheriff gave us, because we're doing our job. We need to test the product, let our viewers know what's going on. So Rob, I think, or Steve, if you guys could test that
both,
and let us know what it tastes like.
We cut it in half, but it's just like you said, it does smell like a pizza.
Yeah, it does. Too bad you have to go to jail to eat this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, we thank the sheriff for sending one back. It's not bad. Like, I don't think this is punishment. Would I want to eat it every day? Probably not. 3 meals a day?
I'm a former vegetarian, so I'm used to stuff like this. But actually, it's not bad.
Yeah,
it really
totally.
So,
that was a very, very interesting story, Courtney. And I'm glad you got the sheriff's perspective. Because a lot of times when you see things on social media, it just kind of touches the surface, right?
And sorry, Mom, for talking with my mouth full.
I know, tell me about it. Okay, so weather-wise, the humid weather is returning.
Yes, it is. And it looks like we'll make it through the weekend without a lot of humidity. Excuse me.
But
Monday it begins.
Okay, so and what I noticed, when you step outside right now,
As a gift to our viewers on YouTube, I am making one free chapter available from my Warrior Pro curriculum. This is the course Investopedia called the most comprehensive day trading course, and the topic of the class is on timing your entries and exits on a
From a Himalayan
In today's episode, I'm going to answer a question that I see posted in the comments all the time. Traders will ask, Russ, if you're such a successful trader, why do you even upload videos to YouTube? So to answer this question, we got to go all the way back to the beginning when I uploaded my very first video in 2013. When I first uploaded to YouTube in 2013, my thought process at that time was that I was going to use YouTube essentially as a video hosting platform because I had a blog and I wanted to embed videos in the blog. And the sort of the easiest and the free way to do it was just to upload to YouTube and then from there embed those videos right into the blog post. It's kind of funny because today I would say that YouTube videos get more views than my blog gets just because of the changes in how people consume and search for information, especially in the like how to something like how to day. Trade, people are more likely to watch a video than to read a blog post. So it turned out that YouTube became very popular, but that wasn't really the intention getting started. However, it does beg the question of, Ross, well, why were you even creating a blog? So I think to answer that question, we've got to take a little bit of a step back. When I was learning how to trade, it was a struggle.
Llévate el nuevo iPhone 17 Pro, además un iPad y Apple One, todo por $0.
Right? And I've shared this a million times. My first year, I had some success, but it was really kind of dumb luck. I didn't really know what I was doing because I was trading a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I was trading penny stocks. I was trading large cap. I was trading options. I was doing everything and anything that was moving essentially, but I wasn't consistent. I really just had some beginner's luck. And then that luck ran out in year 2. And so in year 2, things got real. And I was like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, I definitely need to figure this out. I've been doing this for over a year. I'm starting to lose money. This is getting scary. And so one of the things that was helpful for me was to essentially journal and chronicle what was working and what was not working. So I started writing these almost like kind of like guides of this was the setup I took, this was the result, this is what happened. And I created a blog, which was a WordPress blog, which a lot of people were using at the time just for like almost like an online diary, right? Just like taking notes. So I did that, and it was called Day Trade Warrior. And I just had these blog posts about these different setups that were working and what was not working, et cetera, et cetera. And I decided, once I realized that some people were actually visiting the blog and were enjoying reading about this content, these were other traders who were in a similar position as me. Then they would ask comments that, you could they ask questions in the comments. I realized, I could probably be more articulate, and this would just be easier if I just answered it in a video. So I had, for instance, like a blog post on the volume weighted average price. And I was like, all right, well, let me make a video on VWAP, and then I'll upload that to YouTube. I'll embed it on the blog. And so that was kind of the beginning for me. Now, I recently saw one of my old teachers. I actually went to his house, I knocked on the door, and I brought him a copy of my book, How to Day Trade, and signed it for him. And I said, every now and then you'll have conversations with people, and we'll be talking about, a great teacher you had, or terrible teachers you had, or school was the worst, And whenever I have the opportunity, I'll say that there was one teacher that I had who was an amazing teacher, and there is nobody that even comes in close second. And I said, Kevin, you were that teacher for me. And, he may not have been that teacher for everyone, but for me, he was such a great teacher. It just, the way he taught really connected with me. And in that program, it was a Montessori school, and I only went there for 2 years. I wish I'd gone longer, but I only went for 2 years. And in that school, there were 2 things that happened that were really pivotal for me. The first was we had a semester on the stock market. And so we had a semester on the stock market where we partnered up in groups, and I asked Kevin, I said, what made you think of doing this? And he's like, I was just trying to think of a fun way for you guys to learn math. So they turned math class into basically stock market, which makes sense because you're doing a lot of basic arithmetic. It's very nonchalant, but for me, it was a huge, moment because it opened my eyes to the market. And this was during the late 1990s, which was during the dot-com bubble when things were going crazy. So I got really excited. And I actually tried to invest in a stock for the first time in the late 90s when I went to my local broker's office and I said, hey, I've got $100 and I want to buy this penny stock. And they said, well, we charge a commission of $50 to buy and $50 to sell. So come back when you've got more money. And I was like, oh, man. So 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, in 2001, I funded my first account with real money with Ameritrade. That was before they merged with TD Waterhouse. It became TD Ameritrade. It was just Ameritrade. And that was sort of the beginning of me getting really interested in the market. So my interest in the market has been for more than 25 years at this point. And then the second thing that happened during that period of time was we were all required to do internships. And during the late 1990s, in this Montessori school, we had a computer lab. It was all Apple computers, and they were pretty progressive in that they were really teaching us not just how to use the computer, but we started as sort of a project learning how to do graphic design and how to build little websites. So I built my first website in probably 1998 or 1999, and it was a website, it's the simplest website with pictures of my guinea pig that I had at the time, and it was just like a little info about her. And anyways, that was my first website ever. So for my internship, I did an internship up in Marlborough, Vermont, with a woman who ran a web design business. And I would go up to her studio, and she taught me how to use, how to write in HTML, and kind of how to use these different platforms, how to do FTP uploads to create your actual website, and that was like so amazing for me. And so I started building websites, and through the late 90s and early 2000s, I was building websites for anything you could think of. I was building a website for icons for the files that you would have on your, on your desktop, which was like a cool thing in those days to create a custom icon. So I had a website just with tons of icons. My friend, who was even better with computers than me, he had a website with all these free games that you could download. I had a website with, cheat codes for video games that I was playing and stuff like that, like whatever, the different secret kind of codes that would unlock, unlimited money in SimCity or whatever. And so I was doing all that stuff. And so then when I kind of got back into trading, which was graduating from college during the Great Recession. I graduated from college during the Great Recession, and it's during this period of time when even people who have a master's degree are having a hard time finding a job. And so for me, and for a lot of people that graduated during this period of time, I sort of think of us as like we're sort of like a skipped generation in a sense, because in big employers, we're not hiring people that were coming right out of college because they weren't hiring anyone. And so for a couple years, there was really no hiring. 2007 or 2008, 2009, 2010, it started getting better after that. But it was slow to recover in some of the more rural areas, and I was living in Vermont. So the job market was terrible. And then once these employers finally started hiring people, they were hiring people that were fresh out of college, because someone like me who'd been out of college for 3 years but didn't have any relevant work experience wasn't appealing. The way he taught really connected with me. And in that program, it was a Montessori school, and I only went there for 2 years. I wish I'd gone longer, but I only went over. And it was during that time that I was like, kind of thinking, well, I had this friend, in high school that had made some money trading stocks, and, I've always been interested in it, and, maybe I could give this thing a try. And so I did, and I got into it. And then I kind of ended up just realizing at that time you could create a WordPress website, which is a million times easier than doing all the HTML coding yourself. That, CMS kind of management system is just really, at that time, was, I thought, terrific. So I was like, I'm going to create a blog, and I'm just going to start writing about what's working and what's not working. And then I'm going to add some YouTube videos. And over the years, I started getting more and more traffic to the blog, and people became interested. And in a sense, I set this goal of creating an archive, not exactly like a Wikipedia, but like sort of an archive of anything and everything related to day trading. Like, this was the thing I was so focused on. And I felt like the more that I was writing about it, what I was sort of started doing was I was going and trying to find all of the tidbits from scattered across the entire internet and consolidate them into one place. And this was sort of part of my study. One of the things that the Montessori school was really good at was teaching you how to learn.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
So you chose something you were passionate about, and then they said, these are the things you do when you're passionate about something. This is how you study it. This is what you do. This is how you write reports. This is, you've got your thesis, you've got your 3 supporting paragraphs, you've got your citations, da-da-da-da. And so I kind of approached it from that perspective, that this is my new independent study project. And so this was my masterpiece. My tour de force has been creating this archive of all of this content over the last now 15 years nearly. Yeah, about that nearly. And so it's almost like a master's PhD kind of thesis that this has become. Not that was really the intention, but I just started creating more and more content. And my belief was that the more that I wrote about it and the more that I studied, the more ingrained I would be in understanding. And that would just be beneficial in me hopefully becoming successful. What ended up happening was I essentially kind of inadvertently created what had became a hub of people like-minded, thinking the way I am, about wanting to learn about the market, wanting to find, some opportunities to trade every single day. And so in 2013, I had the videos I was uploading to YouTube. And in 2014, I decided to open a free chat room at Warrior Trading, which was still called Day Trade Warrior at the time. I switched it a couple years later, I think in 2015, maybe, or 16, I can't remember. So I created this free chat room, and basically people that came to the website who were just looking for this random, tidbit about MACD or RSI or VWAP, they would see, oh, there's a free chat room, I'll just log in. And so during that year, the community grew pretty quickly from, initially 12, 16 people, very small. Next, it was like 50 people, 70 people, 100 people, 200 people. And it was like, wow, this is a lot of people. But inevitably, what ended up happening was the free software that I was using to power the chat room wasn't adequate, right? It wasn't keeping up with basically the amount of people that were coming in. So I was like, all right. And we were getting some trolling, people that would come in and just like drop this random, like, I don't know, just like a lot of, I don't know, just weird stuff. Anyway, X-rated, just like links to these weird websites or these torrents or whatever. So it was like, this is getting kind of not good. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put this behind a paywall, and then I'm gonna be able to upgrade my my chat room software. And so that in that kind of moment, it changed from being just sort of like an endeavor, like it's just a sort of essentially a free community, to becoming the beginning of a business. And another thing that I had sort of always been interested in is being a business owner. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, my first business was a web design business. It was me and my neighbor, Trevor, and we created a web design business. We incorporated it with the Secretary of State in Vermont and everything. And we started building websites for, some clients that we had. And we were high school students at the time, and we're building these websites. It was really an amazing thing. So that business didn't end up taking off, whatever. But we did have some projects that we did, and it was a great experience. And so, that was kind of my first business. And so when I ended up creating Warrior Trading as like, all right, this is a company, we're charging, whatever it was a month, I think it was $70 or $50 or something like that a month for, chat room access, monthly access. Then I was able to take that money and reinvest it in the tools. And then one of the first things I realized was that my own skill had really not kept up with being able to maintain websites. So I was like, how do I create like a membership login page? And how do I, embed all of this stuff? And some of it, is easier today than it was then. But, I started realizing, okay, now I'm going to need to hire someone to kind of help me with this. And so things kind of started growing from there. And it was really like, it's such a contrast from when I think of like these Silicon Valley startups that have a ton of money. They're given, $100 million or whatever it is, and they're like, go create this app. For Warrior Trading, it was 100% bootstrap. It was, I wrote the website, I created the website, I installed a chat app, it grew organically. Eventually, I got to a point where I needed to upgrade the platform and the services. And so I had to cover the cost of doing that. I tried running some little affiliate ads and Google ads, but the problem is this is too niche of a sector that there's not enough traffic to make money on ads. Someone was asking me if I make a lot of money on YouTube, and I said no. And the issue with YouTube is that, again, I'm in a niche. I'm not Casey Neistat, where I'm going to get 15, 20 million views on all my videos.
Utility, it's an energy disaster. So just literally just stop with this crazy notion, this belief system you have. There's so many better ways to make money than to sit there in front of a computer and try to trade Bitcoin. You're on a sinking ship, okay? Just warning you. Nothing. I still have never bought a Bitcoin, never sold a Bitcoin, or any other cryptocurrency. I never have done it, okay? So my only picture of finance, and you need to know this stuff. I have been heavily investing in crypto, and as you know, in NFTs. I don't care who you are. If you're just getting started,
and make $10,000, $20,000, on every video that I upload every day of the week. That's just not the reality for this space. Even the biggest creator in this space, and I don't know who that would be, but in any case, they're just not getting enough views. Maybe in the future that'll change, but the way it is right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. So trying to do affiliate, product things on the blog and doing like YouTube ad or Google AdSense, things like that just didn't generate the revenue to cover the costs. So I had to create kind of this membership platform. And then in 2014, after doing that summer, I taught my very first version of the day trading course, which is what has now become my full Warrior Pro curriculum. And I remember my wife, who we were dating at the time, I had taught my first class of the curriculum, and it was so funny because I knew I was going to teach 15 chapters. I kind of had this lined up, and I was like, this is what I'm going to talk about. It's like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3.
Did you know with Capital One, you could see if you're pre-approved for card offers with no impact to your credit score? Don't believe?
So I sit down and teach chapter 1, and I literally... I teach for like 12 minutes, and I had like 3 notes on a notepad, and then I was like, okay, I don't know what else to say. Like I was like had a blank, and she's like, why don't you make a slide deck? And I was like, a slide deck? What are you talking about? And she's like, why don't you use PowerPoint and make a slide deck, and then you'll have a slide, and then build out your slide deck instead of just having like a little notepad with like 3 notes. And I was like, that's a good idea. So I did that. And now that slide deck, which I eventually converted to YouTube slides, is like 2,500 slides long. And that has become my that is like my thesis, my masterpiece. So I taught it for the first time in 2014. Then in 2015, I wrote the first version of my book, How to Day Trade. And during that time, I kept uploading videos to YouTube, and I kept writing blog posts, and we kept getting more and more visitors to the website. And then we got to a point where word of mouth started to spread, where people were like, if you want to learn about trading, the person that you should learn about for day trading specifically is Ross. You should go check out Warrior Trading. And so 2015, 2016, everything was sort of growing. And in 2016, I had a really great year. I made $225,000, right around there. And I'll remind everyone, as always, my results are not typical, but that was 2016. And I was kind of overwhelmed. I was like, gosh, now I've set the bar kind of high. And I was like, okay, well, that is what it is. But so I was like, I don't know, what should I do next year? And then on top of that, I had a lot of people who were saying, Ross, and this was in YouTube comments, which is something that I've kind of learned. You put your content out there and you're going to get a lot of engagement, a lot of comments. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. And on YouTube, I started to have a lot of people who are like, Ross, you've got a big account, $100,000 account. So that's great. You're making $10,000 in one day, but my account's only $2,000. Your strategy wouldn't even work for me. I started seeing that theme a lot. And I was getting, to be honest, quite annoyed with it. I was like, you guys are like, I don't believe that to be true. I really think this strategy is scalable. And, people were like, no, it's not. And I was like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm going to do this myself. And I'm going to show you that it is possible, that my strategy does work even on a small account, at least for me. And so basically in December, I funded an account with an offshore broker with like $600-700. And then there was a platform fee, and there was a wiring fee, and So I had $583 in the account with some cents. It was like $583.15 in the account on January 1st, 2017. And I said, I'm going to upload my recap every single day for 2017. And my goal was to make $100,000. I was like, let's just see what I can do. On day 1 of 2017, with a tiny account, I came to the table with one goal, which was to take only trades that were A quality and to take profit as soon as I was up 10 cents a share. Now, I know 10 cents a share doesn't sound like a lot, and with a $500 account, I couldn't buy a lot of shares, but I was using an offshore broker that was not enforcing the PDT rules. So what that meant was that I could day trade, And this broker was offering 6 times leverage, which not a lot of brokers offer that, period. But anyways, this one was. So I had a little under $600, which times 6 is $3,600 approximately. So I had like $3,500 of buying power. So I thought if I could buy, in a perfect world, 1,000 shares of a $3 stock, I'll get in at 3, get out at 3.10. That's $100. Boom. That's going to be my day. And so I actually pull up my metrics here from that first month. So day one, I ended up getting 2 trades. I made $125, which was a net profit after fees and commissions. And with that, all of a sudden, now my account goes from $583 to $700. Day 2, 2 trades again, made $187. Now my account's close to $900. Day 3, I end up making $150. Now my account's over $1,000. Day 4, another $150. Now my account's at like $1,100. So in the first week, I make $618, and I've doubled my account, which is great progress. Slow but steady. And this is trading the same strategy that I am trading today, years later. And again, this goes back to my emphasis to focus on process. Profits are a byproduct. So my process each day. Step 1 is to find a stock squeezing up. Step 2, analyze the technical analysis of the chart. And I'll just pull up my 3-step guide here. So again, step 1 is to find a stock that's squeezing up. I use stock scanners to find those stocks. Now, in 2017, I also took on this second sort of challenge, which was to build what I thought would be the ultimate day trading dashboard. It's called Day Trade Dash. And I actually, at this point, now we had enough members at Warrior Trading that I had the cash flow to hire a development team to start building out this software, which I felt like if I built it out, this would be the platform that every day trader would use because it would include charts, scanners, it would have the news feed, it would have everything built in, the chat room, my video feed. This would be the ultimate dashboard for an active trader. So I was reinvesting in building this software. Now, some people would say, with the money you're making from subscriptions and things like that, could have just been putting all of that in your pocket. And, on the one hand, sure, I could, but you would pay tax on that. And if you reinvest that profit, then you get to write off that as an expense. And so essentially, when you reinvest in a business, whatever you would have made in profit, you only would have kept half of it because of taxes. But if you reinvest it, you get to reinvest all of it in your business. So if you really believe in what you're doing and you believe in what you're creating, you really should invest in the business. And so I started investing. And so step 1 is to find the stock squeezing, and I use my scanners to do that. Step 2 is to analyze the fundamental news catalyst to understand why the stock is moving. And step 3 is to perform my technical analysis. Step 2 is analysis, both fundamental and technical. And then step 3 is to execute the trades. So, and by the way, I will put a link for a 2-week trial at Warrior Trading for anyone that's interested who's watching this on YouTube, because we do have this 2-week trial that you might enjoy. So nonetheless, the first month there of January 2017, I set out with this goal of seeing how quickly, essentially, I could grow an account with $583.15. And by the end of the first week, I had doubled it. The second week, again, small green days, and then all of a sudden I had a $1,700 green day there on January 12th. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm starting to really get some momentum. So in the second week, I made $3,000 of profit. All of a sudden now, my account is up, 400% in 2 weeks. Going into week 3, I'm pedal to the metal. I'm gaining momentum. I'm gaining traction. By the end of the month, I think it was $16,000 by the last day of the month, which was crazy. Remember, I set a goal of $100,000 for all of 2017 with this small account challenge. What ended up happening was, and I had this audited. So these are my last 7 years of performance audited. So I started on January 1st, 2017 with $583 right there and made $16,000 in January. And then I made $60,000 in February. And in March, I made $28,000 in less than 45 days.
Round 3. You're working on a project so
I turned $583 into $100,000. My results are not typical. So I'll say that again for those that are like, wow, that's crazy. But it is real. It is audited. And I was blown away. So then I was like, well, what do I do now? And at that point, I was like, you know what? You're 10% of the way to $1 million. 10%, yeah, you're still 90% to go. But if you keep your head down, this is what I said. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You will cross over $1 million because I have a process that I'm following every single day. And so through all of 2017, every single day, uploading my recap. Through 2018, every single day, uploading my recap. Through 2019, every single day, uploading my recap. In 2019, I crossed over $1 million in profit. So it took 3 years, a little over 3 years, to turn $583 into $1 million. If you look at the percentage return, it's sort of stupid because I started with such a small amount of money. By the end of 2023, I was at a 1.8 million % return. Now, I'll tell you right now, sometimes people say, Ross, if you're such a good day trader, you would be a billionaire by now. You would have taken, you started with $583 and turned it into now over 10 million. You should have started with 5,000. You would be at 100 million. No. You should have started with 50,000. You'd be at $1 billion. Okay. So I'm gonna call you out on this and tell you why that's wrong. My average share size through this challenge was about 8,000 shares. 8,000 share positions. That's not crazy. Some, of course, were bigger, some were smaller, especially in the beginning, some were smaller, but 8,000 shares. And so if I start with $5,830, my average position size would have to be 10 times bigger. So I would have had to have traded with an average position size of 80,000 shares. If I wanted to turn it into 100 million. If I wanted to turn it into $1 billion, I would have had to have traded with an average position size of 800,000 shares. Now, if we look at my metrics, something that you'll learn is that my average hold time is not very long. One of the things for me, when I started trading, and we'll just go back here, my average hold time was 5 minutes for the beginning of this challenge in 2017. But if we just go back and look at all time, you'll see that my average hold time is not that much different than that. So my average hold time, go back all time right now, I'm at 5 minutes still. So again, it just sort of reiterates the strategy that I've been trading here is really the exact same for all these years. So one of the things that I would say is that day trading is something that there's diminishing returns at a certain point. You can grow your account, as I have, clearly it's certainly possible, but there's a point where you just can't take that many shares to grow beyond a certain level. So the share size where you reach diminishing returns for me has been around 50,000 shares. There are some stocks that I can take a 50,000 share position on, but it's not usually easy to move in and out of the market with that much size that quickly. It's just not really possible during most markets. Now, the pandemic was an exception. And so in 2019, I crossed the $1 million mark. We're still working on the development of Day Trade Dash. We're working behind the scenes. We started with the chat room and the broadcast because that at the time was our biggest pain point. We were using basically like off-the-shelf software like, web. And stuff like that, and it just was not performing well at all. There was too much latency. The stream would drop and people were complaining, and I was like, I've got to give these people the best experience. So my first order of business was developing helping out this streaming solution that I use today, which is ultra low latency. And I'll tell you that it cost a ton of money to develop it out. And I still have this development team that works for me that's helping, keep everything running. But we finally got it. And then all of a sudden, 2020, the pandemic begins. And when the pandemic began, the market crashed. And I was like, what is going to happen now? Like, market dropped 30%. And in March, I didn't take very many trades at all. The market was very risky. But what happened that was really interesting is I noticed on cruise line stocks, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, these stocks dropped like 70% within weeks. No one was going to book cruises now for the foreseeable future for who knows how long. And these companies carry a lot of debt. I mean, these boats are crazy expensive. You know how expensive it is to run a boat, So they drop, but they got exaggerated to the downside. And I started thinking that this was an opportunity to buy a dip for a curl back up. And that was where my dip strategy originated from. It came out of the pandemic. And so I started buying into weakness and catching these pops back up. And I got some incredible trades on it. And some of them were still very short. They were just like buying into weakness and then catching the spring back up. But that felt safer at that time. And so then next thing you know, in April and May, the market starts rallying. We've got this stimulus stuff going on. People are in lockdown. More people are trading. The volume is insane. And in June of 2020, I had the best month of trading in my entire career. I made over $1 million. It's incredible to think about because it took me 3 years to turn $600 into $1 million. And then in 1 month, out of nowhere, I make $1 million. And it wasn't with a big account because I never really kept much money in my account. I would make profit and I would take the money out. So I had a couple $100,000 maybe at most in there, but it's probably more like 100,000 if I'm going to be honest. I'd have to go back and check. So I didn't have a lot of money in my account at that time. So one of the nice things with the way I've got this set up here, so you can always check my statements. So we can go back here to June. So this was 2020. So January of 2020, I had $70,000 in my account. And I lost $4,000. So that was a red month for me. It's kind of a bummer. And then I made a little bit of money here. Let's see. So, these are two accounts. So I've got my regular account and my margin account. So my margin account had 70. My regular account, or my retirement account, had 200,000 in it. So this is April. So then here, all of a sudden, coming into May of 2020, I make I took that money out. So right here. So I make $158,000 and I grow my retirement account from $259,000 to $410,000. And then in June, I make $742,000 in this account right here, and $758,000, and I grow my retirement. Right here. So I make $158,000, and I grow my retirement account from $259,000 to $410,000. And then in June, I make $742,000 in this account right here, and it goes literally from $50,000 to $792,000 in 1 month. Unbelievable. And I also traded my retirement account and made another $500,000 over there. So 1.2 million, best month of my entire career. These accounts are it's unbelievable. And that just continued. July, crazy hot. I went on this long hot streak, consecutive green days. It was just unbelievable. And so all of a sudden in 2020, I made $5 million out of nowhere. Didn't see it coming at all. And, at that time, I stopped uploading daily recaps and I started doing what I called the live day trading morning show. And that was the beginning of the lockdown. I was like, you know what? We're in lockdown. We're all in this together. I'm going to, I'm going to broadcast every morning and we could just trade together and, create a little community in a world that was becoming very isolated. So I did that through 2020. And every morning I would go online for anywhere from 15 minutes to sometimes I would stream for longer. And I would give my watch list and I was streaming my software so you kind of see what my software looked like. And then later in the day, I would teach classes. So then January of 2021, retaught all of my classes, the Warrior Starter, Day Trading the Basics, and Day Trading Strategies and Scaling. And then, boom, we get GameStop. This incredible move. And that week in GameStop, I had my single best day of my career. Nearly $500,000 in one day. More than I had made in, previous like 2-year blocks of trading every single day. I made it in one single day. So 2021 peaks, nearly $5 million of profit again in 2021. And then in 2022, you remember what happened? The Federal Reserve said, let's pump the brakes. We're going to slow everything down and we're going to increase interest rates at a unprecedented level, not at an unprecedented rate. So they spike up the interest rates to curb inflation, which originally they said was transitory, but then they realized that that was incorrect. So they spike up the interest rates, the economy slows down, and 2022 trading kind of tapered off. It was a lot slower. I made about $1 million in gross profit. Great year, but quite a lot slower. So if we look at the S&P 500, 2022 was this sort of stretch through here. And during this time, I was doing my morning show, but I wasn't necessarily doing daily recaps. So yeah, I was pretty beaten down during 2023. The market had gotten to this point where we're not seeing big moves. And I think that this was sort of the result of this, really quick increase in interest rates that had finally filtered down to the small cap stocks that I've enjoyed trading for all these years, where for these companies it was more expensive to borrow money, so it was more expensive to run the business, and they just weren't able to produce the profitability that they had during a time when the economy was better. So I saw a lot of people during 2023 get extremely frustrated. I saw a lot of traders have red years. I was fortunate that I didn't have a red year, but I felt that same level of kind of disappointment, and I basically was beaten into submission to the point where I was just focusing on hitting base hits. I was like, I'm just going to take small base hits. But I didn't upload a lot of recaps. I was sort of feeling like there was nothing exciting to talk about. And I was sort of at a low point in a way. And then coming into January of 2024, I was like, I need to kind of like get my motivation back. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do a new small account challenge. January 2024, start a new small account challenge. So that got me kind of off to a really nice start in 2024. And then I just, kind of rolled into just trading my regular account, built some momentum, and have kept doing well. And then I had a setback. I had a couple of big red days, and I sort of had this epiphany where I realized that I have this habit that when I'm red, I start to get desperate. I don't want to have a red day. And so I start to get desperate looking for anything that can recoup those losses to get me back to green. And that I tie a lot of my kind of self-worth to whether I'm red or green on the day. It seems really kind of silly because in the grand scheme of things, every trader's going to have red days. But what I noticed about my red days, and we could pull up my metrics here to kind of look at this in more detail, is that if we look at my red days, we can compare my winning days to my losing days. What you'll see about my winning days is that my accuracy on winning days is solid, 69%. That's great. My average gain, $655. We could probably look at my profit to loss ratio here as well. But nonetheless, average winner, $1,300, average loser, $900. And yeah, accuracy, 69%. That's good winning day. On the losing day, this is very interesting. My average winner is only a little bit smaller. It's about 1,000, but my average loser is 3 times as big at minus 2,600. And my accuracy is only 50% on losing days. So I sort of had this realization that, is there a way I could know that today is going to be a losing day earlier so I could stop trading sooner and stop digging the hole as deep as I dig it? And I came up with this new concept that I would start each day with basically a quarter of my full size position, and I wouldn't increase my share size until I had first made at least 20 cents per share. In profit, which would give me my cushion. So So my quarter position is about 5,000 shares. 20 cents is $1,000. Now, I know it probably doesn't sound like a lot, but this has been such a game changer for me.